My name is Ashley Monroe. I'm 29 years old, and 3 weeks before my wedding, my stepmother bought her daughter a $200 champagne-colored gown to wear as a guest. I found out the same way everyone else did. Scrolling Instagram in my kitchen, coffee going cold in my hand, and there it was, posted like it was something to celebrate. 12 photos. A luxury bridal boutique, crystal chandeliers, a glass of rosé on a marble counter, and my stepsister, Lila, standing on a pedestal in a full-length beaded gown with a train. The caption read, "My girl is going to be the most beautiful woman in the room." Not one of. That was the moment I knew. This wasn't an accident. Before I take you back to the beginning, if you've ever had someone try to turn your moment into theirs, you'll understand exactly where this is going. So let me rewind 3 years, because this story didn't start with a dress. It started with a pattern. Lila is 2 years younger than me. When she got engaged to her fiancé, Ryan, my stepmother, Carol, treated it like a national event. There were 3 dress shopping trips. 3. The first was just us girls, which meant Carol, Lila, and a private stylist at a boutique downtown. Brunch before, champagne during, photos after. Carol posted everything, helping my baby find the one. The second trip, I was invited. I drove 35 minutes across town. When I walked in, Lila was already in a fitted satin gown, turning slowly in front of the mirror while Carol clasped her hands like she was witnessing something sacred. I smiled and said, "That silhouette looks amazing on you." Carol didn't even look at me when she said, "Ashley, let's not overwhelm her with opinions." I sat quietly for 2 hours. I held Lila's purse. I was in exactly 1 photo. The third trip, I wasn't invited. I found out about it from the album Carol posted later that night. Professional photos, soft lighting, Lila holding white roses while Carol dabbed her eyes dramatically. 38 likes. Comments from every relative we had. I wasn't even tagged. At the time, I wasn't engaged yet. I'd been dating Ethan for about a year. At Thanksgiving, nobody asked about him. Carol asked Lila about her wedding colors twice and then turned to me and said, "So, are you still working that marketing job?" I'd been at my company for 5 years. But sure. The marketing job. I didn't realize then that those moments weren't isolated. They were rehearsals. Ethan proposed on a hiking trail just outside Asheville. No photographer, no setup, just the 2 of us and a ring he'd hidden in his jacket pocket for 3 miles. He got down on one knee, slightly out of breath, and said, "Ash, I don't have a speech. I just know I don't want to do life without you." I said, yeah, he could say anything else. We laughed, we cried, we got lost on the way back to the car. That's Ethan. Simple, steady, real. He's 31, a software engineer, quiet in a way that feels safe, not distant. The kind of person who shows love by remembering small things and never making promises he can't keep. I called Carol that night. She answered on the second ring. "Hey, Ashley." Ethan proposed. I said yes. Silence. Not long, just enough to feel it. "Well," she said finally, "I hope you've really thought this through." Not congratulations, not excitement, just doubt. I told myself she was surprised, that she'd come around, that she just needed time. I was wrong. 2 weeks later, I texted her, "Would you want to come dress shopping with me? It would mean a lot." She replied 3 hours later, "Busy this weekend, helping Lila finalize her seating chart." I tried again the next week. Same answer. The third time, she didn't ignore me. She said something worse. "Ashley, just pick something simple. There's no point spending a fortune when you don't even know if this marriage will last." I read that message at least 10 times. I didn't screenshot it for evidence. I did it because I needed proof. I wasn't imagining it. I went dress shopping without her. My maid of honor, Jenna, came with me. So did 2 coworkers. We went to a small boutique off the highway. No champagne, no photo shoot, just a consultant named Marissa who pulled 6 dresses. The third one was it. A-line, soft tulle, delicate sleeves. Nothing dramatic. But when I looked in the mirror, I felt like myself. Jenna said, "That's your dress." And I knew she was right. I bought it myself. Paid in full. I thought that would be the hardest part. It wasn't. Within a month, Carol started what I now call her version control campaign. She called relatives. She told them I'd excluded her, that I didn't want family involved, that she was heartbroken. My aunt texted me, "Your stepmom says you didn't invite her dress shopping." "Honey, she just wants to be included." I stared at that message. I had invited her. Twice, but in her version I was the problem. That's when it clicked. If I stayed quiet, her version would become the truth. And my wedding would be built on a story that wasn't real. The breaking point came 6 weeks before the wedding. I drove to her house. Didn't call, didn't text. I needed to look her in the eye. She was in the kitchen with Lila. Coffee. Magazines, like any other day. I need to talk to you, I said. She didn't look up. About what now? I want you at my wedding. But I need you to support me, not compete with me. That made her look up. Compete? She said. Don't be dramatic. Then why are you telling people I excluded you? She sighed, turned to Lila. See what I deal with. Lila said nothing. I waited. Carol didn't apologize. She didn't acknowledge anything. Instead, her eyes filled with tears. You're turning everyone against me, she said softly. I stood there for a moment. Then I nodded. Okay. And I left. 10 days later, Jenna called me at 8 a.m. Check Instagram, right now. I did. And there it was. The dress. The $7,200 dress. Champagne, not white, but close enough that it didn't matter. Beaded bodice, long train, bridal. There's no other word for it. I called Lila that afternoon. I saw the dress. I said, silence. You know that's basically a wedding gown, right? It's not white, she said quickly. It has a train. Another silence. I'm asking you, I said. Please don't wear that to my wedding. She hesitated. Mom already told everyone about it. And if you wear it, you'll hurt me. Quiet, I don't know what to do, she whispered, and that told me everything. That night, I called Jenna. She's going to wear it. I know, she said. And we're ready. Jenna works in event planning. She had already thought of everything. The venue had a dress code policy. If enforced, staff could deny entry or require a change. We arranged a backup dress. Deep blue, Lila's size, waiting at the front desk. If they showed up in bridal colors, they'd be stopped, quietly, professionally, no scene. Just consequences. On the wedding day, they arrived at 3:52 p.m. early, of course. Carol stepped out of the car first, wearing the gown. Full confidence. Full intention. Lila followed, also in champagne, not as dramatic but still wrong. They made it about 10 steps past the entrance before staff intercepted them. Jenna texted me in real time. They're stopping them now. Carol argued, of course she did. I'm the mother of the bride. The coordinator stayed calm. Ma'am, you can change or you'll need to leave. Carol refused. She turned, walked back to the car, alone. Lila stood there, frozen. Then she looked at the dress, looked at the venue, and quietly took the backup. Where can I change? She asked. The ceremony started at 4:05, on time, peaceful. Exactly the way I wanted it. Carol sat in the parking lot. She watched from the car. I didn't know that until later. And honestly, it didn't matter. The wedding was beautiful. Ethan cried during his vows. I laughed through mine. Jenna gave the best speech I've ever heard. And for the first time in months, I felt light, like something had finally shifted. The next day, Carol started making calls, telling people she'd been thrown out, that I'd humiliated her. But this time, people had seen it. They knew the truth, and her story didn't stick. 3 months later, she sent me a long message. Lots of, I'm sorry you felt that way. Not a single I was wrong. So I wrote her a letter, by hand, 4 drafts. The final version said one thing clearly, I love you. But I will not let you diminish my happiness anymore. She called 2 weeks later. Asked to meet. We're still figuring things out, slowly, carefully, with boundaries. The dress, it's still in her closet, unworn, unreturned, a $7,200 reminder of a moment that didn't go her way. Here's what I learned. Peace isn't something you keep by staying quiet. It's something you protect by standing firm. And sometimes the only way to have your moment is to refuse to let someone else take it. I didn't expect what came next. Not really. Because when something like that happens, when a moment explodes and then settles, you think the aftermath will be quiet. You think people will move on. You think you will move on. But that's not how it works. Not when the story was never just about a dress. A week after the wedding, life looked normal on the surface. Ethan went back to work. I returned to mine. Emails, meetings, grocery runs, laundry folding on Sunday evenings while something played quietly in the background. But underneath it, there was a shift. Subtle, constant, like something inside me had recalibrated. People started reaching out, not immediately. At first, it was just a few texts, close friends, my cousin who had been at the wedding. You handled that with so much grace. I don't think I could have stayed that calm. I'm really proud of you. I thanked them. 'Twasn't a big deal, that everything worked out. But even as I typed those words, I knew they weren't entirely true. Because it had been a big deal. Just not in the way people thought. The real moment hadn't been at the entrance. It hadn't been the staff stopping Carol, or Lila taking the backup dress. It had been earlier, weeks earlier. The moment I realized I didn't need her approval to have my own life. That was the turning point. Everything else was just the consequence. 2 weeks after the wedding, I met my aunt for coffee. The same aunt who had texted me before, gently suggesting I had excluded Carol. We sat by the window. She stirred her tea longer than necessary. I owe you an apology, she said finally. I didn't respond right away. I believed her, she continued. I didn't ask your side, I just assumed. That's okay, I said, and I meant it. Mostly. She looked at me carefully. No, she said, it's not, and I think I've been doing that for years. That caught my attention. What do you mean? She hesitated, then sighed. Your stepmother is very persuasive. She tells things in a way that makes you feel like you already know the conclusion before you hear the full story. I almost smiled. That sounds familiar. My aunt nodded. But the wedding, she said, that was different. I saw it. Everyone did. She paused. You didn't create a scene. You didn't embarrass her. You just didn't let her take control. That word again. Control. I started noticing something after that conversation, not just in Carol, but in myself. All the small moments where I had given in before. Stayed quiet. Let things slide. Not because I agreed, but because it felt easier. Safer. Cleaner. No confrontation, no tension, no risk of being seen as difficult. But there was a cost, and I hadn't been the one benefiting from that silence. Ethan noticed it too. Of course he did. He notices everything. We were sitting on the couch one night, halfway through a show we weren't really watching. You're different, he said. I looked at him. How? He shrugged slightly. You pause before you agree to things now. I blinked. That's a weirdly specific observation. He smiled. I'm a software engineer. Patterns are kind of my thing. I laughed. But he wasn't wrong. I was pausing, even in small things. What do you want for dinner? Do you want to go to this event? Should we visit this weekend? Before, I would answer automatically. Now I actually thought about it, checked in with myself. It felt unfamiliar, but also grounding. 3 weeks after the wedding, something unexpected happened. Lila called me. Not texted. Called. I stared at my phone for a second before answering. Hey, I said. Her voice was quieter than usual. Hey. There was a pause. I've been meaning to call, she said. I figured. Another pause. I'm sorry, she said. Simple. Direct. No qualifiers. No excuses. I didn't expect that. For the dress? I asked gently. For everything, she said. And there was something in her voice, something real, something unguarded, that made me sit up a little straighter. I should have said no, she continued. I knew it wasn't right. I just didn't want to deal with the fallout. I understood that feeling more than I wanted to admit. That's not an easy position to be in, I said. No, she replied. But you were in it for years, and you still handled it better than I did. That landed. We talked for almost an hour, about small things at first. Work, life, the wedding, then slowly more honest things. I didn't realize how much she shapes things, Lila said at one point. I didn't interrupt. I thought that was just normal, she added. I nodded even though she couldn't see me. It feels normal when you grow up in it. Yeah, she said softly. After that call, something shifted again. Not dramatically. Not instantly, but noticeably. Lila started showing up differently. She texted me occasionally, neutral things at first, then warmer, then genuine. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't a complete transformation, but it was a start. Carol, on the other hand, stayed quiet for a while. No calls, no texts, no indirect messages through relatives. Just silence. And I didn't break it. For the first time, I didn't feel responsible for fixing it. A month later, the message came. Long. Carefully worded. Full of phrases like, I'm sorry you felt hurt. That wasn't my intention. I think there were misunderstandings on both sides. I read it once. Then again. Then I put my phone down. Ethan looked over. You okay? Yeah, I said. I just need to decide if I want to respond. He didn't tell me what to do. He never does. He just said, whatever you choose, make sure it's something you won't resent later. That's the thing about him. He doesn't push. But he always centers me back to myself. It took me 2 days. 2 days of thinking, rereading, writing and deleting drafts, trying to find the line between honesty and peace, between clarity and kindness. I didn't want to escalate things, but I also wasn't willing to shrink anymore. So I wrote the letter. Not a message, a letter, because some things deserve more intention than a screen. When she called 2 weeks later, I wasn't surprised. I had expected it. Just not so soon. "Can we meet?" she asked. I took a breath. "Okay." We met at a quiet cafe halfway between our houses. Neutral ground, public but not crowded. She was already there when I arrived. Sitting straight, hands folded, composed. I sat across from her. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she said, "You've changed." Not accusing, not quite approving either. Just observing. "I think I've just stopped ignoring things," I replied. She nodded slowly. "I didn't think the dress would be that big of an issue," she said. I held her gaze. It wasn't just the dress. Silence. She looked down at her hands. "I can see that now," she said quietly. It wasn't a full apology, but it was closer than anything she had said before. We didn't resolve everything that day. That wasn't realistic, but we set something in place. Boundaries. Clear ones. Respectful ones. Non-negotiable ones. Here's the thing, no one really tells you about boundaries. They don't just change the relationship. They change you. Because once you set them, you can't unsee what happens when they're crossed. Months passed. Life settled into something new. Not perfect, but steady. Ethan and I built routines. Little traditions, Friday night takeout, Sunday morning walks, quiet evenings that felt full without needing anything extra. And for the first time in a long time, everything felt like it belonged to us. Not influenced, not overshadowed, just ours. One evening I opened my closet to reorganize. Seasonal clothes, storage boxes, the usual. And there it was, my wedding dress. Carefully preserved, wrapped, untouched since that day. I ran my fingers over the fabric, soft, light, exactly how I remembered. And I realized something. That dress had never been the point. Not really. It was just the symbol of a moment, of a choice, of a line I finally decided not to let anyone cross. Because in the end, it was never about who wore what. It was about who got to define the moment. And for the first time in my life, that was me. Here's what I know now. Some people don't try to take your moment loudly. They do it quietly, subtly, over time, until you start questioning if it was ever yours to begin with. And the hardest part isn't stopping them. It's realizing you're allowed to. Because you are. Even if it makes things uncomfortable. Even if it changes relationships. Even if it means someone doesn't like you for it. Peace isn't fragile. It doesn't break when you protect it. It breaks when you abandon it. And sometimes the strongest thing you can do is stand in your own life and say, "This is mine."